Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. I've been given the assignment of preparing an engine to run on the silver side that's being sold. So I'm going to take you to that video preparing a 671 engine for starting. This is just a little more from what Bus Grease Monkey has already shown you about preparing an engine. You don't try to start an engine until you prepare it. So that's what this is about. Enjoy. Morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, August 11th, 2020, and today's project is going to be getting the engine started on this 1947 GM Silverside. The project is going to begin with the engine checkout, and I'll get to that in a minute. Right now I want to pause the camera and shift everything into a different position. I'm working alone today, so I'm going to have to deal with the camera sitting on the tailgate of my pickup truck and working on this bus. So I hope you enjoy today's project. The first thing I noticed when I'll get the light turned on here, and then we'll look at this. Sometimes there's plenty of light without, but I never know. So anyway, here's some artificial light. And the first thing to notice, getting it open. By the way, always have bungee cords handy, because otherwise these doors are swinging in the breeze and wrapping me in the butt and knocking my glasses off. So always have bungee cords around when you're working on a bus, because no matter what, you're going to have the wind slapping a door upside your head, and that's very distracting. So anyway, I went ahead and got everything all propped open here and looking in, and what do we see? We see modifications. This fuel filter system is not original, and this valve cover is not original. These were GM diesels, inline 671s, and we notice that this looks like the valve cover off of a truck engine with the oil filler on top and these 12-point bolts holding the heads down instead of thumb screws. And we notice that the oil filler is not down here where the blower drive is. So we're dealing with some different things. The first thing I want to do is make sure that the emergency stop solenoid works. Lift up on the solenoid and make sure that choke plate drops. See this? Make sure that choke plate drops. So if this engine takes off for any reason at all, you can trip the plunger, causing the air to be cut off to the blower. Starving the engine for air will cause the fuel to stop igniting if it's a runaway caused by fuel and the injector is wide open. Another form of runaway is when a seal fails in the blower and it sucks lubricating oil into the airstream, and the lubricating oil will ignite uncontrollably in the cylinders, and the engine will speed up until it flies apart. So we want to be sure that we can always cut the air supply off to the engine under any circumstance. I'm going to set this down now and get a wrench, which I've already prepared a 12.38 socket, and get the valve cover off so I can check the fuel injector rack to see if it will move along with the governor linkage and all of the injector racks. So we want to be sure that the rack shaft will move the injectors to full stop, and that the linkage from the governor is free to move the injector rack shaft. Those of you who watch me regularly are probably getting accustomed to taking your seasick pills before you watch my herky-jerky videos. Someday, maybe I'll have a cameraman with me when this coronavirus thing is over and people come out. And I understand why I'm working alone, and although I complain about it, I understand. We just can't have people around during this virus. So bear with me with the herky-jerky camera, and it should be aimed about right where I am now. And as you can see, I'm using a wireless microphone to help with the audio. Okay, the wrench. My handy-dandy 12-point socket set to loosen these. Loosen these a little bit at a time. Don't try to take the whole thing out one at a time. Get them all loosened first. What that does is it takes some of the tension off of the valve cover gasket, making it very possible to get the valve cover off without ruining the gasket. That would be nice. That would save us some extra time, wouldn't it? So, Stan wants this bus prepared for a fellow who's buying it, who's going to come down and work on it here at our Richfield Bus Company garage, which is where I am right now. I'm in the north yard, right inside the gate in Bloomington, Minnesota. I know some people are nervous about the location, but this is a commercial site, so we do have security. We have 8 former wrestlers, 6 males and 2 female wrestlers, 16 combat dogs, a team of horses from the cavalry. There's our old Minneapolis Northfield Southern. Give a listen. Some of you railroad buffs and locomotive guys, can you tell me if that's a Nathan Airchime KL5? I tried to catch it when it was down in our neighborhood. You saw the train through the trees, but I missed the whistle blowing the crossing. So I hope the microphone picked that one up. They're at Lyndale Avenue and 95th Street. They're crossing Lyndale Avenue at the point where you could hear the horn. goofy things. Who knows why? But I guess maybe this is to keep from bending the valve cover. I don't know why else they would build it that way. So let's see what happens here. Look at that. It came loose. Look at that. This may have been a recent. This engine, the way it looks, isn't the original setup. And I see we have a clearance problem here with this gizmo attached to the governor. I don't know what that is, and I'm not sure how to get this out. There we go. A little bit of force, you know. Who says violence has no place dealing with old buses? By the way, I want you to see the gasket looks perfectly fine, but look at that seal. You notice how the seal doesn't really perfectly seal. Look where it's open. So you guys need to be careful when you use this sealing stuff. Let it set for maybe 10-15 minutes before you tighten down anything. That gives it a chance to get a little bit of a set so it doesn't just all squish out the minute you apply the part. Okay, here we go. This looks pretty good. I'm going to move this, and as you can see, or you can't see, maybe I better get the camera up closer. The rack is stuck. So I'm going to stop the camera now and get a vice grip. Well, would you believe I could not find the vice grips? I had to go to the hardware store and buy a vice grips. I didn't have any in my tool box, and there aren't any in the shop. So anyway, I'm back, and now I learned this trick from Bus Grease Monkey to put the vice grip on the rack shaft. And now, getting back to what I was doing, is when I move this and see if I can get that rack shaft to move. Making sure that I don't bend anything. And I understand that I can move the throttle linkage to the governor. It's moving down inside the governor. And I'm looking in to see if any of the injectors are working. I'll bring the camera over here so you can see what I'm doing. And we'll see if I can move any of the injectors. Here's the rack shaft. And these are the injector levers. This is the rack shaft. These are the injector levers. And down in here, out of sight, because I can't get the light in there. Maybe now. Maybe now. Well, down in here is the injector. And I'm going to move the rack shaft and see if any of the injectors move. And we go over to the back side of the engine and we find nothing moves. So that means that one or all of the injectors are stuck. So the procedure now is one by one to loosen this. It means retiming everything, of course. All right, I'm going to put the camera back where it was. And I'm going to try to loosen it from the back side. And see if I can get anything to move. It doesn't look like it. So that means one by one, I need to free up these injectors. So that means retiming them, but that's just something we'd probably do anyway. So I might just as well start and do one of them at a time. I'll start with number 6. And I'll go through, wow, that was loose. The bottom screw was already loose. Now that I've loosened the screws, and I'll get the camera back up close again. And what I'm going to do now with the vice grips is to see if I can free up injectors individually. If I could get them all loose enough to move the whole rack shaft, if I could get all 6 injectors loose enough to move the whole rack shaft, then I can go to the starting procedure. And with the engine warmed up a little bit, they should free up completely. So I'm going to start by doing one by one, and I'll bring the camera over so you can see that. I've put the vice grip on number 1, or number 6 rather. Well, where is it? Here it is. Okay, I have the vice. And look at, all I had to do was just barely touch it and it came loose. See there? No, you don't see it. See this? And now I'm moving that whole injector. I wish I could get this camera down in here so you could see. There you can see. way down dark, that little dark square thing in the shadow, see that? That's the injector rack. So I was able to free up that injector by just loosening the screws on top, these screws, and moving that. So I'm going to do that now to the remaining 5, and then if I get all 5 of them loosened up, then I can reset everything and go to the next step, which is preparing the fuel system. So I'm going to stop the camera now and go ahead and get the other 5 loosened up, and then I'll be back. I spotted something that I should show you now before I go any farther. If I can get back to this, you see the injector rack? See this? Okay, now I want to show you something. If you look at this injector, you notice this. See, I'm getting in my own light. But if you see, that injector is all the way in, which is the full open position. This injector now is out in the full stop position. And this is why we do this. These injectors, because of the natural spring action of the governor, when the engine is stopped, the rack shaft moves to open the injectors to create a situation of full fuel for the next starter attempt. And as soon as the engine fires, that rack will move to the idle position. So right now, the way it is, the injectors are stuck wide open, and that's why engines run away. And that's why we free up the injectors before we ever attempt to start an engine that's been sitting for a while. So I'm going to cut the camera off now and get the other 5 freed up, and then I'll be back. If you go ahead and get your camera in there so that you can see the rack move. Can you see? Can you see this moving?
Move your hand, I can.
Well, then if I move my hand, then people don't know what I'm pointing to. How about this? Okay. All right. So now that we can edit that, and the screwdriver is where? In your pocket?
I think you had it. It might be on the front seat.
If I had it, God only knows where it is. All right. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so this is where it starts now. This is where the video is going to start. Well, I'm back. Got all 6 of them loosened up. Now the next thing to do is you'll notice that I've gone ahead and loosened everything here. You can see now how this. So now, the way that these are adjusted, and I'm going to unadjust all of them so that you get the real picture of it. Some people like to set these so that they're lined up wide open. I like to set them up close. So here's what happens now. If you'll watch this one, can you see that one, Glenn? Is the camera showing that movement? You see, this injector rack is moving from full wide open, as you see here, to totally closed or throttled. The word throttle means close off, choke out. So when the injectors are so-called closed, they're actually throttled. If you open the throttle, you're at maximum fuel. So now what I want to do is I'll demonstrate with this one, but I ordinarily would start at one end or the other. And I'm going to set this injector rack so that it completely closes each injector. So what I do is carefully, while I'm holding the rack in the full closed position, I will carefully adjust these. Notice how by moving these screws, I'm moving the rack. See? So what I want to do is make sure that the rack is fully closed. And that is the top screw. See how the top screw is moving the injector rack? When it gets to that point, just do this, just touch it. If you turn this screw any farther, you're going to move the rack shaft, and that's going to get all the injectors progressively farther from full close. So just bring that screw up until it just touches. Now go to the next one. In this case here, I am going to do, I don't know if you could.
You do that, we'll see when you go to the next one.
All right. So I'm just going to bring the screw up. Make sure the bottom screw is plenty loose, because the two screws work against each other. And just bring that up until it just touches. Okay, now go to the next one and do that same thing. Make sure that you can move it so you know you're doing something. And now watch, I'm going to turn this screw and see how it moves that rack up to the closed position. Back this screw off so you're sure that you're moving that one. Just up to, just touch it, okay? And then the next one, and always make damn sure you're holding this rack shaft in the full closed position. Now these three that I've adjusted now I'll just touch with the bottom screw. Just touch with the bottom screw. If you move the bottom screw too far, you're going to move the injector rack away from the full closed position. All right, now we're going to go to number 4 and do the same thing. Can you see that? Okay. Now again, loosen the bottom screw plenty and adjust the top screw till it just touches. All right, the next one, loosen the bottom screw, make sure you're moving the rack, and then just adjust the top one just like that. And when you're sure you just touched it, then just touch it with the bottom screw. Like that. All the while your hand is holding the rack shaft full close. If you get tired and if you get to moving this rack shaft, you're going to throw the whole thing out of alignment. All right, here's number 6. Just bring it till it just touches, and then the bottom screw till it just touches. Okay, now go back over. Make sure that they just touch. Just make sure they just touch. The top one first, then the bottom one. Sometimes these screws get grit in them and they feel like they've stopped when they really haven't. Okay, next. Now, with the screwdriver, just gradually, just very carefully, just lovingly, just turn it just a hair tight, and the bottom one just a hair tight. And the next one just a hair tight. If you're young, you probably can get the screwdriver blade into the slot on the first try, but me, I have to shake my way into it. Okay, remember, just barely snug. See that? Okay, now go back to number 1 and do it again. top one first. A little bit, just a little bit. Just a little bit. And the same with the bottom one, just a little bit. I hope the camera catches that little bit of movement, just ever so slight. Do the top one, then the bottom one, and the top one, and the bottom one. Yeah. Come on, shaky. And the top one, the bottom one. All the while you're holding that rack shaft down, or holding it full. I call it down because show him with this. Show the vice grips. See, I learned this trick from Bus Grease Monkey. The vice grip, it works perfect. Make sure that you're holding that down, and just if you feel this vice grip move when you're turning the screw, it's because you've tightened it too much, and you need to back out. Just a little bit, just a little tiny bit at a time. If you get one of them a little bit off, it's not going to make a difference, a big difference. The engine will still stop, but they may not open wide open. Okay, now this is my third journey, see? And there's still just a little bit more. Just the top one is tight. Now you can tighten the bottom one. Go back and get the top one. The top one pushes the injector rack toward closed. The bottom one pushes the injector rack toward open. That's why they have to be perfectly balanced. That's the way this engine was designed. It's a good design. I like these engines because each injector generates its own pumping power. Instead of having one master high pressure pump with 12 pipes running back and forth, we just have one. Each injector is its own pump. This is number 5. Now you can do it with a grip. Remember, if you feel the rack move, you need to loosen that and go back. That one I can do twice. Okay. See how much these move? Okay, that's enough for now. Now look and see what you've accomplished. Does it look like every one of these? Get your light in here, Glenn. See, every one of these now is spaced evenly from the head. See this point here? Every one of them should be spaced evenly. And now, you'll notice how freely, see how nice and free that's moving? The whole rack shaft. It is now in the starting position. This is the stop, this is the start, this is the wide open. When the engine starts, it's going to drop back to about here to an idling point. So the injectors are about 2/3 wide open now for starting. As soon as the governor spins, it's going to drop back to the idling position, which is about here. Okay, that's it, Glenn. You can stop the camera now till we get to the next thing we're going to do.
The next thing we did was put 10 gallons of fuel in the totally empty tank. Then we attempted to connect a battery and we got a big spark. There's a short circuit somewhere in the main line. So that's where it ended for the day. And so I'm going to end the clip here. As you can see, we got the rack freed up. We got all the injectors moving, got the rack shaft freed up. The governor springs are really working nice. That governor just bounces that rack shaft right into the starting position with no delay, no friction or anything. So that's going to do it for now. And the next step will be for me to get back there next week and locate that short circuit. And after that, then we'll get back to getting that engine started. Thanks for watching. Be sure and leave comments. I always read the comments and I appreciate everything you say. Okay, bye.